In this video, I want to show you some examples of strong previous student projects for the final project. Like the images that I already showed you, there's a huge range here. Some are typologies or similar to typologies. Some are a little bit more, they're documentary. You're going to see a whole range of projects. So I'm going to go through each of them very much as I did for the other video and just go through them, show you the group of photos as a group so you can see how they interact, and just tell you a couple things about them, about what's successful. Okay, so let's get started. I'll go to full screen. This first group has 8 photos. Okay, let's take a look at that as a body of work. So this series is a series of portraits, clearly. The photographer wanted to do a series about her best friends. She said, I don't have a lot of friends, but the ones I have are very important. And so she decided to do 2 portraits of each of them, one that was more serious and one that was more humorous. And each of them were in a single location that was significant to the subject in some way. I thought these were really delightful, really beautiful portraits, really successful. Okay, let's go to the next series. I think there are 10 in this one. Okay, cool. We'll go ahead and go to full. Okay, go back and show you the whole series. This was one of my very favorite final project series. This student had gotten interested during the time and space in double exposures, which she could do in her camera. And so she did a series of local buildings in the Solano County area, in the Fairfield area, layered with flowers that were located nearby. So these all are actually true double exposures where she did them in camera, photographed the building, then found a flower that was nearby, photographed that, and laid them over each other. Really, really intriguing and successful, all about memory and nostalgia. I think there's a couple that are just incredibly outstanding, but as a series, it was very, very extraordinary. And I love that so many of these, that all of the flowers are nearby the building that was taken. And having lived in Fairfield for a while, I think this is even more meaningful to me. These are familiar territories. Okay, next series. Let's see if I can pick them up. I think there might be more than 10 in this one. I apologize. I think I tried to pare it down to 10, but let's go ahead and oops. I think that one should not be here. There we go. That's why. That was actually a mistake. Okay, let's go ahead and I'll show you this next series. All right. Okay. It's one of my very favorite series, and I want to point out before we talk, I'll just give you a little bit more information, that this photographer has since, very, very soon after this, or even during the same time period, has become a staff photographer for her local newspaper. So this led to some really nice ongoing work. This photographer lives in Winters, California, which has a series of celebrations and festivals. This, I believe, was the Youth Festival, and she photographed these all in color and then decided to use the selective color to pop out the things that were most intriguing. I want to point out that all of these photos worked really beautifully when they were all color as well, but I loved her careful and thoughtful use of the selective color. If you're curious about that, one other student asked me about this, how to do selective color in Lightroom. This is not Photoshop, this is done in Lightroom. I'm happy to give you a quick tutorial. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is another portraiture series. This is, well, I'll go ahead and show them to you first. That's right. Okay. And we'll look at the whole thing. So this is another portrait series. And this photographer was also very interested in documenting people that were most important to her, closest to her. She documented 4 people, including herself. And she had a very specific idea in mind about the kind of portraits she wanted to make. She really worked hard to create this very dark background. She worked with some lighting. She was really interested in working with lighting and shallow depth of field. They're really beautiful, really very, very expressive. Okay, next one. And this has many photos to it, and there's a reason. Oh, no, sorry. I'm going ahead. This one has fewer photos, and the next one has quite a few. Okay, very different kind of series. Okay, now you might notice that this has fewer photographs in it, and that's because each of these 6 photographs was very, very labor intensive. This student also became very interested in some of the experiments of time and space, and also in spirit photography or ghost photography, which was a big deal in the 19th century and continues to be an interesting area. So she decided to make herself a ghost within her house and created this series of very intriguing, provocative photos. I want to point out that one of these photos was accepted into a very competitive high school, or a very competitive student, not just high school. It was a full national student exhibition, the one with the computer. And unfortunately, that show was not able to be done in person, but it is on their virtual exhibition site. So really, really beautiful and provocative series. Okay, now this next one has quite a few photos to it, and I'll go through them singly, but then I'll pull them up because it's actually, they're not meant to be viewed individually, even though I'll show you that way initially. Okay, let's go and look at this. And actually, I realize they're pretty effective as an individual, but more effective when you look at them all together. This student really, really enjoyed our color section and really enjoyed making Our color wheels, we did color wheels in class with this class, the object color wheels, and he was really intrigued with the idea of doing this as a project. So he collected photographs, mostly semi-abstract, a couple of different ones, to create a full color wheel or a full color spectrum with these abstracted photos. So each photo is beautiful, and each photo also moves from one to the next very, very carefully, moving on to the next color. I really love this concept. Okay, couple more. Let's see. Oh my goodness, I might have to hurry up. I don't want to do that with these beautiful series, but I'll show you a couple more. Okay. Clearly a typology. This is also a smaller series. There are 7 in here because this particular photographer was enormously careful and meticulous about making sure that each of these leaves fit within her final project. This was clearly taken in the fall. Really beautiful example of typology. Okay. And let's go to this next one. This is a beautiful series, and even more exciting was that this was one of the very youngest students I've ever had. I believe he was 15 when he made this final project. All about architecture, line, form. He chose to convert these all to black and white. I really wish he'd been able to come back and take the architecture class. Hopefully he'll be able to do it. A little bit of repetition or redundancy here between these two photos, but they're both quite strong. I don't believe I marked him down a lot for that, although I would have said I would have opted to edit one or the other of this photo out. Really great series. This is a very simple series. I'll show it to you and just again tell you just a little bit about it. Okay. I really enjoyed revisiting this series. I had forgotten about it. And this is 12 photos. It's a little bit longer because she really needed enough photos to give you the full texture of this farm where she lives. I, I feel like when I look at these photos, I really feel calmed. I feel present. I feel like I can smell the wood chips and the horses and manure and all of that. I think it's a lovely, expressive documentary series. Okay. Let's see. I have 3 more. Good. I can do this in under 20, and these next ones, a couple of them need some explanation, but mostly I can just go through. Okay, this is a very interesting expressive series. This student had acquired these strange colored filters that she stacked up on the top of her lens. It creates that vignetting that you see and made this sort of imaginary, surreal uh, series of photographs of the landscape around Solano and around where she lived. It's just a very interesting, expressive, and alternative way to approach things. Next, another landscape series. Okay. This student really loves post-production, as you can tell. These were all done in Lightroom, and obviously it was taken in the fall. It's this representation of a hike that he took. I really love this series. I love the palette. I love the mood. And I love that he was able to create this strong sort of surreal post-production using just Lightroom. He didn't go into Photoshop or any other software at all. You could also really do this easily with a process like Darkroom or one of the mobile applications. Next one is conceptual. Let's see, there we go. So this was from a few years ago. This was a very intriguing series. I'll just show them to you first. Okay, so you can see this is a conceptual series, uh, very powerful. Um, I can't believe, I think she may have used multi-image, which is a way that you can uh, align images in your camera after taking them rather than multiple exposures, which have to be one on top of the other. But she created these texts, which she overlaid in her camera onto flowers, which of course represent beauty and perfection, and overlaid these images, these words, which are the kind of things that people say that undermine us and undermine our perception of ourselves. It's a very moving, really provocative series. And the last one, on a brighter note, yeah, this actually has far more than 10, and I went ahead and left them in. I think you'll see why. Okay, so this last series was by a student. She did this portrait series of her daughter. And one of the things that I love about this series is that her daughter, who was, I believe, 12 at the time, was pretty annoyed with her mother taking all of these photos of her daily life. So I think the final result becomes this really wonderful description, not just of her daughter or being portraits of her daughter, but of their relationship and of this time period of all that all of us have been through of growing up and growing into ourselves. Okay, well, that is it. I managed to get it in under 20 minutes. I hope that these are inspiring to you, and one of them might help you to formulate your own final project.